Good morning, everybody. Welcome to No Fuss Turnout Control, or what I like to say is the JMRI panels for the narrow-minded narrow gaugers. When I talk about JMRI to our narrow gauge group, I usually get the following responses. Sure, I use Decoder Pro, as if that's everything. Or, I'm a narrow gauger. We don't have signals and we don't have dispatching. So that's the end of that. If I'm lucky, I might get that JMRI stuff is way too confusing, but it's kind of cool. At least the door's a little bit open there. But today, hopefully, I'm going to show you some stuff that'll show there's more than just Decoder Pro that we can use as narrow gaugers. It gives you some options of doing something really by software versus hardware. It might really actually save you some time. So with that, we'll get started because that's what I want to talk about is kind of starting small into JMRI because it is a very huge program, but trying to get a big impact out of it. And really that picture on the left was something I just grabbed off of Google, and it's a panel of switches, and you can see all the wiring on the back. I don't think for our narrow gauges it gets quite that complex, but the reality is even the most simplest little switch area does become kind of a nest of wires with both the toggles and the LEDs in order to give us any indication of what's going on. And then, of course, you have to do something to stencil the track on and then build some kind of panel. And then heaven help you if you decide to make a change, because then either you get to kludge on the change or you get start over. But there's a kind of a software electronic way. And that's what we're really going to talk about today is using JMRI and potentially a tablet and really displaying the same thing, but realizing you can totally change it at any point in time or use it wherever you want to. And then that can be a big deal. So with that, I'm going to talk about, well, what does it really take? I've kind of listed it down into 5 steps. I would say most of you probably already have the first step done. If not, first step's a little more familiar to you, which is the hardware side, and then you can go from there. I think the biggest challenge with JMRI is the 5-minute tutorials you can find on YouTube that don't exactly cover what you want to do, and it makes it very hard to learn. They do have a lot of written tutorials and help pages, but again, there is so much there. Figuring out where to start and where to go, that's really the big challenge. So I've prepped what it took me days to figure out now onto a sheet, and we're going to cover it in really about 10 minutes. So hopefully I'm taking what took me days to figure out into what now you can have in your hand in really about 10 minutes. Then we're going to turn around and do it. And I'm going to challenge that in 30 minutes, I can make a control panel for you. Honestly, it'll probably take less than that, but that's the reality. And we'll go through the cheat sheet first, and then we'll just walk through and do it. And hopefully that daunting task won't be so daunting anymore. So I know you're all looking at me going, prove it. And so I'll say, okay, the challenge is accepted. But we have to do that homework on that prep and the cheat sheet. Let's start with what it really takes. We'll look at that first step. It's the hardware. You're going to need to do something to set up your turnouts that they have electrical control. Otherwise, there'd be really no purpose in this at all. But there'd be no purpose in building a control panel if you didn't have electrical control on your switches. So that's where you start. Lots of different choices. I'm really going to focus on one today, but there are many different things that JMRI can interface to, whether it's part of the DCC system or whether it's got a separate bus like CMRI or LCC. And we can talk a little bit about that, maybe answer some questions at the end if somebody has that to go through. Then we're actually going to jump into JMRI. We'll do the learning prep. And then we'll do really the 4 steps in JMRI, building a turntable, drawing a schematic, linking the turnouts to the schematic, and then really publishing it so we can actually use a tablet. And then if we have time, might do a little bonus which makes things a little prettier at the end. Okay, so number one. So what's the basic? And I'm going to cover a simple one here. I do think there are several people using it. A lot of equivalent items out there that you could use. But the one I'm going to talk about is the NCE Switch It or Switch 8. And now they call it MK2, which is really just the second version of it. The 2-channel one is the Switch It. The 8-channel one is the Switch 8 or Switch 8 MK2. Depends on what you have. I still have some old Switch 8s. They work fine. Now realize you could have some equivalent Digitrack solutions, LCC, CMRI, but I'm going to focus on the NCC. It's really straightforward. If you look at the schematic there in the bottom corner, the only thing you're connecting is 2 wires to your switch machine and 2 wires to the track. They actually have on the newer versions the ability to actually put some toggle switches right on your layout, and then it would control directly. There is some benefit to that. Realize that I do have many people say, yeah, but what if I don't have JMRI running? Could I still run my layout? The answer with the Switch It or Switch 8 is absolutely yes. First of all, you can run it from your cab control or what else you've set up if it's CMRI or LCC. Or if you actually put on a couple toggle switches, just something that was local, you could wire it there and then you could then control it all manually, or then you can build these panels and have JMRI running. I would say down the road, most of you that jump into the JMRI, you'll find you might go ahead and just turn on the JMRI and just have it ready to run because there's so many other things you can do it with it too. But a lot of plug and play solutions, not complex wiring, and really lots of options there. But the Switch at 8, real simple, fairly cost effective, not much per turnout, so pretty easy to do. So now let's talk about the learning prep. And I'm going to break this out into segments. The first one I want to talk about is that turnout table. And JMRI, there's a ton of tables. And once you get into the Panel Pro side, which you guys are used to using Decoder Pro, but once you start in the Panel Pro, then you go into Tools and Tables, and then you get this long laundry list of tables. The only one we're going to use today is turnouts. And on turnouts, while there's lots of choices, the only thing we're really going to be worried about is setting up the system name and then the username. The system name is kind of how it talks to the system, so it's very defined. The system you're using, like NCE, starts with an N. A turnout means it's a T, and then you have accessory numbers. Well, the accessory number is nothing more than if you hooked one of the Switch at 8 up and you actually made it DCC controlled, then that's an accessory control. And if you went to accessory 3, you're just putting that corresponding 3 over here. So you'd end up with NT3 because it's controlled by your NCE DCC system. It's a turnout and it's accessory number 3. That's really all you're doing in this table. The nice thing is then you can give it a username because who the heck remembers where NT5 is? And now you can label NT5 as your MindSpur or siding A, or industry X is siding or spur, or passing siding. And so that's really nice. I did mine where I have it actually as kind of a series. I'll have like the town name and then the section name and then maybe the turnout name after that. So I kind of came up with a strategy for mine. I am controlling a fair number of switches on mine. So just consider what you want to do there, but you can change it, and you can change it after the fact. And that's the beauty of it being in software. The nice thing also is when you go to build it, you can build a whole bunch of them at a time. There's a thing that says add a sequential range. So remember, it's just accessory numbers. So most likely you did a switch at 8 and it might be 1 through 8. So now you can go over here and just say, I want NT1 and I want it 8 times, and it'll just sequentially make 1 through 8 for you. then you might do 16 through 23 or some other group of numbers. And so you can make them all at once, and then you can just go back and edit the names on the turntable. Not turntable, the table. So that's the prep for the turnout. Okay, as we start to actually create the panel, we'll be in JMRI. And as you get started, there's a few key things to know. First off, we're going to go into Panel Pro. Remember I said that's the second program like Decoder Pro. We're going to go to Panels, New Panel, and then actually create a layout, so Layout Editor. That first time in, we're going to want to come back and save it. So we're going to say Store All Tables, Contents and Panels. That's under File. Once you've done it once, then you come back to File again, and you just keep saving over the top of the same file. But you'll create it there. Notice it's not only saving the panels, but it's saving the actual table contents. And as we pointed out, we are going to use the turnout table. And so that means it's going to be saved with our panel. So that's important things to know to get started. In addition, there's some nice options and some things to set up to initially, because then it's going to make the rest of our editing that much easier. So we're going to do show grid in the edit mode. It just makes for alignment of our drawing that much easier. Then there are some track options. There's really quite a few of them, but down in the bottom left, there's some presets. We're going to use classic JMRI. It's a great starting place. Realize you can come back to here to make some of those visuals changes and options to really change up the look and the feel for it, or even go into the individual settings. But to begin with, classic JMRI will give us a great place to start. On turnout, we're actually going to turn on animation. We're going to turn out turn on to see the circles. We're going to set the standard color as green. We're going to set the throw color as red. We're going to tell it to fill the circles with those colors. Then we're going to turn the circle size and set it to 3. Those will be some nice starting points. And then we're going to just turn on to go ahead and draw the unselected turnout leg. It's just part of the animation, makes it easy to see. Those things, if we set them up first, gives us a great starting place. And then you can come back and customize all you want. But that should give you a good look and feel to begin with. Just realize there's an edit mode, and when you select it, you're just toggling in and out of edit mode. Otherwise, you're running the panel. And then lastly, you can add a background image. Now, if you've already got a drawing of your layout, you might want to throw that on as a background image. You might have to do some resizing for it. But after you do put it on, then you're virtually dropping your layout turnouts on top of your track plan you already have. Maybe you've used another program to do that. So keep in mind, it is something you can do. It's a nice trick, and it can either kind of get in the way because it makes it too blurry, or it's really handy and you really like it. So your mileage may vary, but it is an option that you can use. So these things, great place to start. And then we can go right into really editing and drawing our track. So a really good starting point to be at. Then once we're there, we need to know the commands. None of these to me are intuitive. So somewhere you had to find in the tutorial to help that these are the commands. Once you know them, they're simple. But if you've ever jumped into this yourself, it's not necessarily intuitive, and you get frustrated really fast. So adding an item is hold the shift down and then left click. Now the first thing you do is select the item at the top using the radio buttons. So you got to get in a habit of that, then the shift and then the left click, and now you've added it to the screen. Now you can move it, which is a right click and hold. So now click and hold. Now you can drag it around, move it around, do anything you want. Real easy to do after you drop everything on the screen is then start aligning stuff. So don't get too caught up in perfection to begin with, because it's so easy to do after the fact. Then the other one is the right click, which is changing the properties. Now you get a menu item up and you're going to change properties. Now there's lots of properties. What do you really need? If you look at turnouts, you might need to rotate it so you can line it up on your screen. You might need to edit it so you can make that configuration and connection to the turnout table. Those are the primary two things. Most of the things that control the turnout, we're actually back in those defaults and the ones that I think you're going to use most of the time. Now, I'm not telling you there's not others you're going to use, but if you start here, you can have a control panel. On the track, you get to choose whether it's a main line, hidden, or dash. Now realize you're really checking a box. So you're either a main line or you're not a main line, or you're a hidden track or you're not a hidden track, or you're just telling it, hey, I want a dash line here instead of everything else that you have chosen. So that's just the line type. The nice thing is here, I get kind of ahead of myself sometimes. I'm drawing track and doing all that. And then I realized I either drew everything as a siding or I drew everything as a main line, and I missed it. Honestly, not a big deal. It's easier to kind of draw everything as one and then go back and just right click and then just change it from a main line to not main line. And sometimes it's easier to do that after because you can see that whole track section versus while you're doing it. So keep in mind, not a big deal as you're first laying it down because you can right click on change the property and change that. Splitting, I will do that. You'll see why splitting a track is such a big deal. Really makes things easy. Changing from a line to a circle, ellipse, and a Bezier, that's just a type of curve. Now realize that I actually built my first track plan with all the curves. Honestly, I don't really like it. I like the straight line, more schematic approach, personal taste. But I went to all the trouble of learning all that stuff because I thought you needed to. And then later on, I realized I think I would have preferred it as straight line schematic. So I'm probably going to go pull all that stuff out. But you can do it either way. You can either make it look like it exactly looks, or you can make it look more like a schematic. Either way you want to go. The last one is more on labels. Of course, you can edit it, change the size, and do the attributes. But that first one, level, becomes a big deal in case you have overlapping labels. Which one's on top makes a big deal because it just draws on top of itself, including its little borders and margins and stuff like that. So keep in mind, that's about the only place I think you're going to use levels. Probably be a bigger deal if you added images and things like that. Okay, that's going to get us started. Really, 3 commands: shift and left click, right click and hold, and just right click. That's your commands. You can do 99% of what we need to do with just that. Lastly, there is a strategy to it. What should I do first? I will tell you I would add all the turnouts first. Now, there's probably other people will tell you a different way. Not a problem. I don't care. I will tell you this worked for me, and I would just say, hey, start here. But if you learn a better method, hey, share it out because maybe it is a better method. But I do the turnouts first, and then I flip and rotate them and get them lined up. Remember, I did the image of somebody's track and then laid them over the top. Kind of made it a little easier for me. I then ended up at the end moving them all around. So don't get too carried away on it. Just get them on there, get them going the right direction, left hand versus right hand, and maybe rotating them. Once you've done that, once they're close, they're close. That's good enough. An end bumper. An end bumper means we need to end the track. So a spur, it's dead end, a dead end siding, anything where there's not going to be another track ended at that same point, but just one goes and then stops, that's an end bumper. So now you need to start laying the end bumpers down, and of course, at the end of all your tracks. Anchor point. Well, if an end bumper is the end of track, then an anchor point's the middle of the track. And so why would you use the middle of the track? Why not just draw one line? Well, what if I want to go up at a 45 degrees and then straighten out until I get to my end bumper? Well, that's why I need an anchor point, so I can draw up to it and then from there over to my end bumper. So now I can put anchor points on, and kind of strategically make it so that I can draw that schematic a little more easily. Now, remember I talked about splitting a track? Guarantee you're going to draw a line, and after you finish doing it, you're going to go, crap, I should have put an anchor point in there, because that will look a lot better with a bend. Well, the beauty is you can then highlight that track and say split it. Splitting it puts an anchor point on it. And then you can drag that anchor point around and move it wherever you want. So really easy, really simplistic. So now you got them everything on there. You're going to draw the tracks. And so that's really the next item there, drawing a track. And between every turnout and an anchor point or an anchor point and a bumper, you're just going to select a track, going to select main line or not main line, and then you click on one dot and you stretch it over to the other dot, and that's it. Remember, shift in order to lay something down. So shift, and then you click to the first dot, then the second dot, and then that's how you lay it. Now you're going to finish with the alignment. And that alignment is nothing more than right click and hold. You can grab any point on there and move it around. And that's all I did. Everything was kind of at an angle because I did it off a drawing. And then I just straightened everything out and made it look nice. I ended up then adding a few more anchor points because I wanted kind of more a stepwise curve or angle. And then chose to do that. And that's where splitting that track is easy. At that point, I would add labels because maybe you want to list out what that turnout is. So you might just say turnout 5. So that can help you out in case you are using the cab control and you need to know it's accessory 5 that controls it. And then the last step is connecting the turnouts to the table. And we're just going to edit each one of the turnout. And there's a little drop down and we're going to select the turnout. And that's it for matching it up. And now we're doing it. Now you've learned what took me days and hours to learn because I just put it all in one place for you. As a matter of fact, I put it on a piece of paper and handed that out to you. So you have a take-home cheat sheet that's front and back. And it's everything you need to just sit down and start doing JMRI. So let's dive in. Okay, here we go with the demo. And the first thing we're going to do is do that turnout table. So we're in Panel Pro. We're going to go down to Tools. We're going to go look at the tables. There's that huge smorgasbord of tables. We're just going to go to the first one that says Turnouts. And there it is. And right now the table's empty. And so we can see that. And we're going to click on Add at the bottom. Remember I talked about the fact that we have a hardware address, that is the system name, then the username, and then also we could do a sequential add. So we are just going to say that hardware address is, we'll just start at 10. And then that username, we're not really going to worry about at that time. So we're just going to say turnout. But then we're going to say add a sequential, and we're going to put in 8 of them. And we're going to say create. And now it's made them. I can click here and then it'll sort them. Now there's my name. So now I could go in here and edit each one, but I believe I can just type over. Oh, can't. So I'll have to just do an edit, and we're going to go in and change that name, and we will call this main to yard east, and then we will go to the next one and we will call that main to yard west. Go to the next, and then we will just call this spur A, and we'll do this one as spur B. Now we're just going to leave the rest of them as they are. I just wanted to give you a sense of this. Okay, and at that point, we can actually close this out. What'll happen is it'll just stay there in the background. And now we're going to open up and create a panel. Now, if we weren't going to do a panel, we would probably want to make sure we were saving that, but we're going to save it. And remember, I said they save together. So we're going to say panel, new, and what we are doing is a layout. And there's that layout. So first thing I might want to do is just go right up, and we've got it. So we're going to store everything. And notice I have an old one here that says Gary Test. That was because it was his yard. So we are going to do Gary's Gulch. And then I'm going to store it. And now remember, what we want to do at this point is really set up some of those options. So if we go to options, then we come down, now we can actually see some of the things we'd want to do. So we have the grid options. It's already checked, so that was the default. So we're good. Track options, set track drawing. And down here, it defaults what I had used last, but I'm going to choose classic JMRI and then say OK. Now we're down to the turnouts, so back over to options. That was track, so now we're looking at turnout. We have allow automation is checked. Draw the turnout circles. Notice that the last one, unselected leg, is already checked. So now really we want to do set some color. So the standard color, we're going to set that to green. And then back to turnout. Set the throne color to red. Back to the options. Fill the turnout circle, so that we want checked. And then the last one is the size. And it looks like it's 4. We'll just start it on 3. And that's it. And if you go back to options, we're in the edit mode. Now we've set everything up. I would probably go back up and store again. And remember, we call this Gary's Gulch. And it always asks you whether you want to overwrite it. Remember, I said you might do sequential in case you're unsure and you want to go back to a previous step. And now you're ready to start laying things out and dropping in commands. Everything at the top is a radio button to say, hey, do you want to add a turnout, a specialty turnout? Am I adding a track, a piece of crossing, a track segment? If I choose a track segment, is it a main line or not? Is it dashed or not? Then are those nodes for the end bumper and the anchor point. We're not going to worry about edges from one panel to another right now. The other ones that we would worry about would be a label, and then we can type in our text. We're not going to worry about any of the other options that are on here. So remember, I said start with some turnouts, and if I'm clicking on here, nothing's happening. What do I have to do? It's a shift and then a click, and now I've got it. Then I can move it with the right click hold, and I can move it around my screen, but then I can also rotate it, and I might change it, let's say 30 degrees, and it should rotate backwards 30 because I put minus. So that might be a good one right there. Let's say I want to drop another one, so shift and hold, and now I can actually bring that down and align it. But actually, generally, you put it up here. I'm going to want to do the same thing, rotate it, minus 30 degrees. And now these are starting to get lined up. So first thing I want to do is choose the right hands and left hands and just start dropping a bunch of them on the screen. And so let me just put a bunch on here. So I'm going to hit shift and click. And I'm just going to put a bunch of switches on. Then I'm going to drop in a bunch of left hands. And then now I can just grab them and start laying them out where I want them. Now remember, I might take this and rotate it a full 180. Because maybe this one now I'm right click hold, and I want it there. And then maybe I want one that goes right here to drop down into a spur. Now I got to be on the other end and get one that, let's see, which way would that go? That would be this way if I wanted it to be out here. And I'm going to want to rotate it. So I'm actually going to do minus 150. And now you can see I'm kind of lining it up here. And I'm going to have the one that's going to come up to this and the other one that's going to come to here. But I'm going to need another one in there. And that would be right here. But it's going to have to be rotated. Okay. So let's start. Let's do one more. Yeah, this one here. And we're going to rotate it at 150 again. Okay, now remember I said we want to do end bumpers. So out here, I'm going to have a spur, but it's just going to go nowhere. Remember, I'm clicking, nothing's happening. That's because I need to do a shift. And now I've got an end bumper. Maybe looks like I have predominantly all connections. So now I need some anchor points, because right now you can see it might be hard for me to connect this to this one, or even these two with you straight out. Maybe I want an anchor point here in order to get this line a little farther away, and this one up here, and then the rest of that. Well, I need an anchor point. Actually, I need an end bumper for my kind of start and maybe my finish down here. And now I've got some points on. Remember, if I made a mistake, not a big deal. We can do track segments. I would say most of this is not the main line. So it might be easier if I just draw everything not main line, and then I can go back and connect them up. Now here's the beauty part. Now I've got a track, and I'm just going to point to the first one, shift, click. And now I've connected it. I am holding on this, but I'm just doing shift click to hold, drawing it to the second dot. And that is how fast this thing starts lining up. And we just about have a whole yard. If you notice, those anchor points turned yellow first, and that's because they are supposed to have two track segments on them, like this one here. And until I add the second one on, it's not complete, and so it doesn't know what to do. And we have one that needs to go from here all the way to here. And that looks pretty ugly. And so that was that one where, probably should have had an anchor point in there. So I can go down here, and on the circle for that line, I can right click, and I can simply say split. And now I got a point. Remember to move, right click, shift. Now what I'd actually do is, let's split it again. And now we could have a nice segment there. Now I'm dragging this one, and now we have pretty much a straight line. Now, if you notice, I drew this, and it kind of followed the plan, and everything is kind of at an angle. No big deal, because now I can actually start moving these things around and then making it really nice. So I can actually get here and make a nice line segment and really start making these things line up the way I want them to. So we can just watch that thing be nice straight lines. And you can see not only can I line it up the one way, but I can kind of line up the switches and actually start getting things to look pretty good here. Now maybe this one, I didn't like that at all. As a matter of fact, that switch is supposed to be the other way. So I'm either going to need to delete it and replace it, or because rotating it won't do it. So probably I should just take that one and delete it, which is right there. And I say, yep, I'm sure. And now I have only got right hand turns. I need to go grab one more left hand, and we'll add it on here. We will now move it down, and now things are looking a little bit better, except for the fact I need to put that back together. So easiest thing, delete those track segments. Go back up, grab a track segment, and let's reinsert them. Oops, I don't need those little anchor points. So now I can draw the track segment. Don't need that anchor point. And we can move this. And we're starting to get a pretty good line. Now, as a matter of fact, we could leave this down like it is, but it looks like we could have gone straight across. So maybe we want to line that one out here. Notice that the grid lines could start being your friend at this point. We are going to leave that the way it is. But I'm going to move this, and maybe I do want this straight down, but I kind of want to indicate that I am going straight down. So maybe I take this line and I split it one more time, and I get a nice line like that. So we start straight in and we end up going pretty much straight out on the list. Turns out we didn't need these. So I can go back and just delete them. And now you can see I've not only drawn everything, but I've actually gone in and aligned it, put it together. And really at this point, might add a few labels. So just to show you how, this could be Gulch Yard East. And so then I could just, you remember it's the shift, and there is Gulf Yard East. Right click and I move it on, and then I could do Gulf Yard West, and then shift and add that here, and away I go. Whoops. Well, not sure why that one's all moving around on me, but we'll fix that later. And then let's say I had one more, and it was that spur A. And so we click one more time, and there we go. Now, remember, these are the ones that right-clicking I can change the alignment, and I can edit that text, change its margin, change its font size. You can see it's really small on me. Now I got something I could read, and now we can really start changing it up and making it look better. It might change its color. And lining it up. Last item, we just need to connect those switches. So if I take this turnout and I edit it, Then I get to use the drop down, and that was main to yard east. And that's it. Click done. And then over here, I'll take this one and edit it. And that was main to yard west. And then this one may have been that spur. Now, I'm not going to take the time to do all of them, but you can see that's exactly what you do. And once they're clicked, now they're actually functional. And we are in the simulation mode. I can come out of edit. And now I can click this button. And now you notice green and you notice the line goes straight. And if I go red, notice the line is going up. And the same here. Green is straight. Red is diagonal, and we can do the same thing out here. And you have full control. And you have now just built a little turnout area, and really the only thing you have left to do is to publish it. And of course we can go in, we could go back to those track options, just so you can see this really quick. We could change this to realistic and apply it. And now we actually have 2 tracks, ballast, ties, and the whole 9 yards. Certainly if you're doing the rounded and the realistic one, that's probably where you want to go. Otherwise, drafting is 2 track, and then classic is single, which to me is more like a schematic. But the nice thing is here is we have not only the rail count but the rail width, and I would say, boy, that's pretty darn small, so I might take this up, and now you can see it's much more bold and we can see it. And then remember I said after the fact we could drop in into edit mode and take this track and make it a main line. And now we can visually see our main line from the yard. Pretty much have finished that. Drop out of edit. And you can see when you turn the grid off how much easier it is to see your track. Now you got indicators, you got the turnouts. You could put a turnout number there. Maybe you want to do that if you are using your accessory control. You can put the little numbers next to each one of them. You can tell your main line from your sidings. You are good to go, and you are now ready to publish. So now we've finished the panel. What do we do with it? How do we make it show up over on that tablet? It turns out it's one checkbox. You simply have to turn on the web server down in Preferences to publish the panel. So you're going to go to Panel Pro, Edit, Preferences. You're going to go on the left pane down to Web Server. Then up in the top, there's 2 tabs, and the second one is Web Server again. Don't know why they actually did it that way. And there's a little checkbox that says started automatically, and all that means is next time you start JMRI, then the web server starts automatically, and any panels you have open are now available to show up. So now you just have to grab your tablet or even your phone, and you need to connect to it. And you simply need to know one of 2 things, either the computer name or the address of your computer. Now, every computer is a little different these days, but one of the things you can do is go to Settings and then System. That's usually where the computer name is listed. And then if you go over to Network and Internet, that's where your properties are listed. The properties has the address, while the system has the computer name, and there you go. If you noticed it, back in the web server, there was a port number, and that's the 12080. And we have to add that to the computer name or the IP address in order to basically address it. Now it's just like going on the web. It's like going to Google and type on google.com. only you're going to type in either the computer name or the IP address, then you're going to put a colon, and then you're going to put that port number, which was 12080. I'm not sure where they came up with that number. I'm probably sure that what it was is kind of an empty range, and because this is used by a lot of different systems, and so they wanted something that would be normally empty. Once you do that, then what we just made will now show up on your tablet. So anybody who actually set up earlier and linked, if you link your phone onto that Wi-Fi network that I showed you, if you now go choose this address, then it will pull up on your screen and you would actually be able to show it. Now that last item and is really something I'm going to leave for you to play around with, what I call the bonus round. Really, you go back to the options and you can try the other presets. You're going to find it goes from a single track line to a dual track line. You can add ballast, you can add color, you can change the width of it, really about anything you want. Now you could also explore, hey, I don't want a schematic, I want it to be more real looking. And then now you can change those lines to circles, ellipses, and the Bezier, which then allows you to make better curves. Of course, you're probably going to want to go back on labels and change the fonts, the sizes, and maybe the colors, because while they look great on your computer screen, once they're on a tablet, not so much. And so now you're going to want to play around with that. That's what I call about the bonus round. And so now you can really make it look a lot better and or change it to your personal taste. And now it's time, cut the cord, forget about all those hardwired control panels, make yourself a JMRI panel, save yourself a whole lot of effort, and add a lot of flexibility to your system, even on a narrow gauge layout. Thank you.